Hello, my name is Cash Goodwin, and this is my Game 266 game pitch presentation for Nimoy's Day Out. So, hello again, I'm Cash. I'm in my junior year at SCAD. I am a current game design major, and I was previously an illustration major, but now it's my minor. On the left, I have a small game I worked on last summer called Game in Nimoy. It is another game that Nimoy has previously appeared in, as you will see in my presentation. Yeah, and it was just emulating kind of the old Game Boy style Game & Watch games. So I have a link down here if you want to copy that and take a look at it. I'm very, very proud of it. I made it with my good friend Hayden. Now onto my spark. I've always taken a great liking to fishing throughout my life. My father and I would go fishing regularly when I was young. And after I moved from California down to the south, I took up fishing as an actual hobby and regularly fished at my neighbor's next door pond. I've gone on many vacations to the south, like even back when I lived in California, and I've just really loved swampy and marshy areas throughout my entire life, and I think they just really work well for, especially a story like I'm about to tell in my game. So here's my game summary. Nimoy's Day Out is a cozy, narrative-driven fishing adventure set deep in the humid swamps of Canatuna. The game blends wacky cartoon antics with a focus on laid-back exploration and fishing mechanics. The players will be immersed in a quirky world full of charm, humor, and mud. On to the key gameplay. Nimoy's Day Out is a cozy fishing and exploration game. It's built around this colorful cast of characters I created, cartoon shenanigans, and steady progression through fishing mastery. Players will take control of Nimoy, exploring the swampy world on foot and by boat while fishing, making conversation, and upgrading gear. Nimoy is after the legendary goldfish, a fish that is said to shimmer like money itself. On this quest, the player will complete a detailed fish compendium that catalogs every species caught. So for the game world, Nimoy's Day Out takes place in multiple locales. However, the most common areas that you'll be in are the small fishing town of Canatuna, which is here on the left, and the surrounding marshlands, which I have on the right, as well as Nimoy's actual house. I'd really like to keep this illustrated look in game, if possible. I go into it in more detail later, but I do want this game to be cel shaded, and I would really like to make my environment stand out by having this really sketchy kind of lined style. So for the storyline, Nimoy's house is totally falling apart. Nimoy needs money to repair his house and fast. Believing a local legend, Nimoy searches the neighboring town of Canatuna, which is said to house a legendary goldfish that glimmers like money itself. Nimoy is tempted many times to stray off track during his endless search. However, he is always inevitably led back on track by Goggles to continue his thankless journey of saving his own current life situation. The fish of legend is found. However, the term goldfish was maybe a little less mystical than Nimoy or Goggles thought, as it's just a regular goldfish, and it's only legendary because it's green, like money. While their quite unfortunate catch is still on the line, the extinct coelacanth swallows up the goldfish on the line and is hooked by Nimoy. Nimoy and Goggles, upon catching the prehistoric beast, are hailed for their incredible efforts. Nimoy and Goggles aren't paid for the great discovery. However, with their newfound status, their house is restored to its former glory by willing townsfolk who idolize them and their fishing skills. So mechanic 1, fishing. The main mechanic in my game is obviously fishing, and I'd like, as you fish, to actually fill out a full compendium with the different species that you've caught. So the player would traverse the world as Nimoy, keeping an eye out for fishing spots. Fishing spots would appear randomly on the surface of water throughout the game, and they just appear as a small gathering of bubbles to show you that there's something underneath the water. The compendium would be a complete catalog of every fish Nimoy has captured, and it would be accessible in an in-game menu. So here I have this mock-up that I made for this mechanic in Unreal. It's a little bit abstract, but I think it kind of gets the point across. I have these white squares, which act as the bubble on the surface of the water, and then the collision box, which would check to see if the hook and bobber actually hit in the correct space on the water's surface in order for you to start catching fish. So my second mechanic is exploration. Exploration itself in this game would be a huge part of the main gameplay loop. Players will be able to explore on foot and in a boat. You start the game on foot, just going from pond to pond, catching small fish, but as you build up money, the player is eventually given the opportunity to have a boat. It's beat up at first, but can have its capabilities upgraded. So in a boat, Nimoy can now traverse lakes and rivers and catch new and bigger fish. So again, we have one of these Unreal mock-ups that I made. I simply just attached a boat to Nimoy's character model for the sake of showing off a screenshot. I also just have a big textured plane right above Nimoy's feet of just water. So obviously just a mock-up, but this is what I imagine it would sort of look like. Mechanic 3 is upgrades. So throughout the game, Nimoy will be able to buy new fishing upgrades and equipment via a shop. Upon catching the fish, the player is able to sell them for cash. Depending on how many unique fish Nimoy has caught, Nimoy can unlock new upgrades and equipment to purchase, so like baits, rods, reels, and bobbers. So bait will increase chances of rarer fish biting, rods will make it harder for fish to break free, reels will make you reel in the fish faster, and bobbers would make it more obvious when a fish bites. Now, this mock-up I have in Unreal is also a little bit abstract, but as we can see, this would be a menu screen, and this is where we'd have those equipment items that you buy. So we have a bobber, a reel, and some bait, as well as the actual rod itself. Now onto the characters. So here we have Nimoy and Goggles. Nimoy is the cat, Goggles is the rabbit. So let's talk about Nimoy first. He is the main character, he is who you play as, and he is a self-proclaimed expert fisherman. Nemo the cat is dirt poor and feeble-minded, and worst of all, his house is totally falling apart. Believing a local myth, Nimoy scours the lakes and ponds of the neighboring town of Canatuna for the legendary goldfish, as well as being accompanied by his rabbit pal, Goggles. He hopes for legendary fish to be the solution to his half-submerged house, and most importantly, he wants to get back to a sedentary lifestyle of fishing. Now onto Goggles, who is a very prominent side character in this story. He is a magnet fisherman, and he is also a swindling, lying through his teeth freeloader who loves to take advantage of Nimoy's hospitality. Believing a local myth, Goggles tells his fishing-inclined buddy Nimoy about a rare catch that can snag them a lot of dough. He hopes for this legendary fish to be the solution to all of his monetary problems, and most importantly, wants to get back to his couch. On to my first creative inspiration, I have The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. I touched on it earlier, but I want my game to be cel-shaded and have a very natural color palette for my characters, and I really like how The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker handles that. I just really like how expressive Link is in this game and how his eyes look around, and I would really like to be able to do something similar with my game. So for my second creative inspiration, I have The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. I'm going to preface with I never watched this show as a kid because I thought it was a little bit scary, but as an adult I do really like the scratchiness and the watercolor texture of the show. I really like how this show illustrates its backgrounds and its locations, and I would really like for my game to follow some of these design aspects, such as the heavy nautical theming. For my first gameplay reference, I have Fortnite. Fortnite has an often forgotten about fishing mechanic that has the exact visual indicators I'd want to employ in my gameplay. I like the use of bubbles on the surface of the water, as well as the occasional fish that leaps out of the water as you're casting your pole. For my second gameplay reference, I have Link's Awakening, both the original on Game Boy and the remake on Switch. Where Fortnite's gameplay reference is more visual, this one is definitely more mechanics-based for me. It handles its fishing gameplay in a very similar way to how I would want to execute it in my project. I like that you can shake the fishing lure to attract fish, and I also like that while you're reeling in the fish, you kind of have to play this game of cat and mouse with the fish where you can't reel in while it's pulling away or else it'll just completely snap the line. It's really intuitive, and I'd really like to put something in my game like that. So for my first UI reference, I have Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing also has a fishing compendium and is probably the main inspiration for mine. I really like this illustrative menu that they have here, as well as the option to kind of pop out that menu into the actual in-game models used. And I really enjoy how it's not linear and the fish are kind of like stacked, interspersed with each other. I think it just looks very natural and it's very fun to look through. It fits the exact vibe that I'd want to accomplish for my own compendium. For my second UI reference, I have Hollow Knight. I really admire the illustrated menu elements in Hollow Knight, like his little sword, as well as the little fragments of the mask that you get. For Nimoy's Day Out, I'd imagine I'd adopt a similar illustrative style for an in-game menu, with the fishing rods, the bait, and the lures. I actually showed this off earlier in the presentation, right here. This is definitely the vibe I kind of want to accomplish. I like the idea of it being a scrolling menu, much like Hollow Knight, where I imagine one of these pages would be maybe a map, and then the second would probably be the fishing compendium itself. But overall, I am very inspired by Hollow Knight and how it handles its menus. And that's my presentation. Thank you so much.